Welcome back. This is the week you missed. It's more like the month you missed at this point. Things are busy. The world isn't closed anymore. Although who knows, it might close again. We're kind of on the brink of World War III, in my opinion. We're already in a civil war, in my opinion. We just haven't really seen parts of it yet. But we are going to talk. I guess, Todd, I think you have some things you want to talk about, so I'll let you
I
start us
mean,
off.
Jeremy, how can we not talk about your brethren tunneling under New York City?
Yeah, well, I
But
I thought you were going to say, I was hoping you were going to say My Brethren and the Tunnels, because that's two stories in one, or not in one, but that's two stories, and we kind of can talk about both of them. But you want to talk about the ones in New York first.
yeah, man. I mean,
I
it's
mean,
just
the
I don't know.
video,
Like I don't.
the video
It's
is
just crazy.
crazy. Uh,
It's
I
not.
think, in my opinion, not to cut you off, but I think one of the funniest parts about it is I saw this guy who tweeted in November or something
Yep.
that I don't have a basement and I hear Jews underneath me.
Yeah. He's like,
And
I
then
swear,
like,
I hear digging and people speaking Yiddish. He's like,
yeah.
I don't have a basement. I don't know what's going on.
And then a month later he said like, I'm not crazy. I hear Jews speaking Yiddish underneath and digging. And then a month later, what do we find? There's tunnels underneath, and this guy was right, which I thought was hilarious. But what
No,
have
it's
you heard,
like
or what do you think about the whole thing? Or
well, it's very interesting because I know that, in New York, you've got these communities of sects of like, the Hasidim and like the ultra Orthodox kind of vibes, and that they're very sort of they do their own thing, they stick to each other, like they, are really like this subculture, and I know they've done like they have their own like whole system that they run, and it's like that's fine. But it's like I don't know, man. It's just but I don't even know if I have any like serious real thoughts on it. It's just like crazy. It's just a crazy story. Like it's just like 2024 is getting started off strong with
I
just
mean,
wild shit.
2024 has definitely been off to a wild start, and it's definitely just going to get crazier. It's an election year, not even just for us. I think it's an election for like Ukraine, Russia, China, or Taiwan. I think there might be like a quarter of the world or something might even be an election. I don't know. Something crazy.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. But a lot of big elections going on this year. So it's definitely going to be a crazy year just from that. Um, but I guess back to this story, I guess one thing, in my opinion, that's a little I mean, of course, it's expected. It happens with everything and everyone. I'm not just complaining because it's Jewish, whatever. But I think a lot of times people see certain types of people and then equate it to like broader groups that it must be
Yeah.
all of them. And like, I agree with you. Stereotypes are. You didn't say this, but stereotypes aren't always completely wrong. I don't think like at all. But and I think the group in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, has some wild characters. There's been stories of like you can't divorce your husband without like permission, and
Yeah.
people will like go and do like kidnapping or like basically like mafia type stuff of saying like no, don't do this or whatever. They have
Yeah.
then this I think is kind of cool actually. They have like a whole inward community of paying and stuff and doing marriages and all of that.
Yeah.
Not to say they all do this, but some like take advantage of taxes and get food stamps um, or what's it called, welfare, even though they have
Yeah.
money because all their money is kind of hidden and they trust the
Yeah.
community so much that they don't need to trust banks and all of that. But
Yeah.
what I was getting at is one, not all Hasids are crazy and wild, but there definitely
No.
are some. But then what you see, which is a little annoying too, is like obviously they're Jewish, but they're very different than the
Yeah.
other Jews in America and or Jews in Israel and or Hasid Jews in Israel, Hasidic Jews in Israel, where people all of a sudden just like stereotype they're Jews, they're doing bad
Yeah.
things, and then make all these connections and said like I saw someone say it's Epstein related to Epstein and children and whatever. And what I really think it
Yeah.
is, not me defending, um, it seems to be from what I've like read, because there's a lot of one rumor that people say, hey, maybe it's that is it started during COVID because they weren't allowed to go. So they made little like tunnels in between stuff so they could hide it. And then I heard too, they're just trying to expand the space. Like they just want more space. I guess not paying for it or like keeping it near their building. So like, hey, there's room in the ground. Why not just dig a tunnel? I don't think it's anything
Well,
nefarious like abducting kids
no.
or people and all that, but you're seeing plenty of rumors like that.
No, and it is unfortunate because like obviously anti-Semite's gonna anti-Semite, and this is just like one more thing for them to go crazy about and make shitty comments about and all of this. But like to me, like have you seen the movie Shawshank Redemption?
Not like recently enough to remember
So
any of it.
Andy Dufresne, the main character, Tim Robbins, he tunnels out of his jail cell to like a sewer pipe to get out of the prison. And one of the plot lines of the movie is like, oh, I've got all this dirt, how do I get rid of it? And he would like take handfuls of it out to the yard every day and like sprinkle it around. And like that, like to me, like my interest in the story is almost strictly from like a civil engineering standpoint. It's like, where did all the dirt go? How are they digging it? Like what? Like I'm just intrigued by a purely like mechanical aspect of how they did this and like how it got pulled off and where, frankly, just where all the dirt went. Like I've dug gardens in my yard that are like, you know, a foot deep, 5 by 5, and the pile of dirt you get once you start digging it out and it's uncompressed is gigantic. And it's like to dig a tunnel, like I just don't, because you're also in New York. It's not like they live on like, it's not like a rural area where they've got a giant backyard where they can just pile up all this dirt. Like it just makes no sense. I just like I wish just from that standpoint I would like to see it. But yeah, no, and I think you're absolutely right. All this stuff about like, oh, this is like child trafficking or it's Epstein related. It's like, no, it's not. Like, like most things in life, it's going to be some like weird, mundane explanation. I also have heard the COVID angle about using it as, a way to get where they need to go for religious stuff without, getting around the restrictions and whatnot. But yeah, my assumption is, and again, because that the community is so like insular and like, they just sort of like keep their own shit to themselves. I bet we never really find out what was going on. Like, I bet everyone's
Yeah.
just going to basically just shut up, say nothing, and it'll be just like a wacky story about New York City. Like, hey, remember that time?
Yeah.
Like,
I
it's
mean,
just,
I agree. I also, what I don't really get though, too, part of it is when they got caught, the video is them like ripping down this wood so they could all funnel in. Did they didn't really think they're gonna stop the cops uh from filling in the tunnel, right? Like, why do people do stuff like that to make a bigger scene and likely get in more trouble when it's like, yo, you got caught, kind of okay, guys, now you guys fill up the tunnel. I just don't really understand what that whole scene was about because it looked so chaotic. And
yeah,
that just never looks good. And it's like, do you really think you're gonna overturn the cops in New York? Like, there's no way.
no, yeah.
So like, what are you guys really doing? But that whole scene was absolutely that was mind-boggling.
No, but yeah, like you said, the whole thing is just absolutely crazy. So yeah, but I don't know. I'm interested to see how this plays out, but my guess is it just sort of fizzles and goes away, and we never really get satisfactory answers about anything, would be my
Without,
assumption.
without a doubt. So that actually reminds me a little bit of a graph I saw for like the end of the year. We're still kind of in end of year 2023, like reflecting on whatever, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
showed the Google searches, maybe top Google like news searches of the year, and basically you don't until like you see this graph, you don't realize how many things are such big news, and then within less than a month, you're already
just
on to the
go
new
away.
thing. So like
Yeah,
especially this year with all the big things happening, this story is already probably all kind of forgotten. By next week, I don't think anyone's gonna really be talking
no,
about it because something else is gonna come up. But like last year, remember how big the submarine was? No one
yeah,
talks about the submarine at all anymore. Um,
yeah.
I don't know. There's a few examples like that where it's like, oh, it seems huge, and then it's no, all of a sudden it's literally forgotten.
No, and that's it's a gift and a curse because it's like we have access to all this information, but that means just stuff just gets pushed off like the main plate, so to speak, very quickly. Because it's
Hmm.
just like, oh, something new happened. Like
And
can we
sometimes on purpose, by the like the power. that be or whoever's making these decisions will put in a bunch of random news to deflect from like some of the bigger things.
Yeah.
You don't really hear at all. You don't hear too much about. I feel like Ukraine, Russia at all anymore, which I think is a
No.
little interesting. You don't really hear about. You don't hear about like Israel, Palestine, Gaza, like the real stuff that's happening. You hear a little bit
Mhm.
about like this many people died, but you don't hear about like are they getting farther into Gaza? Are they controlling more Gaza? Is
Yeah.
Gaza what's happening there? You don't really know. And then with this new thing, I'm gonna segue a little bit. It looks like U.S. UK is bombing Yemen, and to me that's interesting because like a lot of I know it only happened a day ago, but a lot of the news there is very obscure and like you don't really get details, which I think is pretty interesting. Is like who are we bombing? How much are we bombing? It just says
Yeah.
target, and you're like, are the targets people? Are they machines? Are they how many
No, I
people are
think
dying?
it's people. We're probably killing a bunch of them.
No, I know. I'm just, but
Yeah.
they don't really say that.
Yeah.
And then I bet you, in my opinion, we're probably going to start doing this for a while. But you probably heard about it today. It's, I'd say, going to be almost back page news real soon,
Yeah.
and they're going to be giving us a bunch of other news to focus on while they do whatever they want.
Well, and and it is really interesting because I don't know if you know, but like the Marine Corps, the original reason the Marines were created, or one of the original reasons where was for defending basically international trade. So they were pirates off the Barbary Coast, which I don't know what part of Africa that is, but that's what they called it back then. But there were these pirates that were going and raiding ships and all this. And I believe it was under Thomas Jefferson, maybe, or whoever created the Marines, and their goal was like go get on some boats and go stop these pirates from messing with like our commerce. Like it was,
Mm,
and so it's almost weird because it's like people are like, well, this is crazy. Why are we even doing this? It's like, well, actually, this was one of like the first things the American military ever did in terms of like projecting global power was like, no, we're going to take a role in making sure that people can trade because
yeah.
they knew that was important and we're getting right back to it. I mean, I don't know if you looked at it, but this whole situation again was basically shut down the Suez Canal. So
Hmm.
if you were a boat going from like India to New York, instead of going through the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean, then across the Atlantic, they would have to go all the way down around the bottom of Africa and over. So, just imagine how much extra fuel, time, expense, everything. And I just
Here's the
don't think
interesting
people, yeah,
question though. Why the U.S. have to um, do something about that? Why, like, because that's affecting everyone in the world, right? Not just
that's
us.
one of our, it's one of those things that I feel like the US has always done, but most people just don't really understand or pay attention to it. Like we basically like one of the most ongoing continuous operations the US Navy does is basically defending international shipping lanes. That's just what they do. They patrol around the area, they make sure it's safe, they make sure if anyone's popping off that they don't. And so like I think this is just now, it's like this is just being brought to the forefront because most of the time people don't want to mess around and find out, but now these people are popping off, and now it's like the US has determined that we need to bomb a bunch of people in Yemen. Now, I think it would be better if we had a broader coalition of countries that were involved in this. And like one, just so that the US isn't footing the entire bill for it, and two, just so that there's more international consensus around it. But
Hmm.
look, I mean, people make a lot of money selling bombs. You don't get to sell more bombs unless you're dropping bombs. So I don't know. Like it's war is good for the economy in messed up ways, and I don't like that. But it's sort of like it's just a statement of fact. It's the way it goes. It's sort of the way it's always been. So yeah. So I
Yeah,
think,
I think there could be a
but
new
yeah,
way, maybe, but
yeah. It'd be nice if there was, but again, I think this is just getting like you alluded to World War III, and I think all this stuff is just making me nervous because it's like where it's one misplaced bomb, one, US jet getting shot down somewhere by someone, and it's like this stuff could spiral out of control very quickly.
yeah. Well,
Um,
I
and
think
yeah,
some newspapers or countries might have referred to World War II as World War II as early as like 1939 or 1940. but I believe like it was Britain didn't refer to it as World War II until like the late 40s. And there's some
Mhm.
other countries that didn't refer to it until mid 40s, whatever, where to me it makes sense like, oh, uh, I mean, there's like 50 wars going on right now. I don't
Yeah,
know how it's not really a world war. It's a bunch of proxy wars, but it's Russia, China, US, the main powers in the world that like are kind of button heads are involved in all of these proxy wars. To me, that's a world war. It just doesn't look the same as like the old ones, but I don't know how it's
yeah.
not.
No, and you're right. It definitely it's like it's sort of the same thing, but it's different because our technology is different, the way things work are different, and it's sort of weird because it's like we have this sheen, this like coating of civilization, and like everything's at peace. We're all trading with each other, but in the meantime, we're all funneling cash to people and fighting these wars in other countries and doing all this stuff. So I think and
It's
I
a
think
classier
it's
way to do it.
sure, yes, and it's but I think your point is right and the instinct is right, where it's like this could very quickly shift from this sort of like pseudo undercover war into like full blown like mass scale war that is more traditionally viewed as a war.
Yeah.
I think at this point the stuff with and it's crazy because I've been hearing less and less about sort of what's going on in Israel now too. It's like I didn't even know if I'm assuming they're still doing ground what.
I don't want to say too much, but that might be a good thing for Israel, at least if you're on that side. But less news about them is probably better for
Well,
them.
and it's just I just don't understand. Like, and it's like I look at that conflict, I look at the Ukrainian conflict, and like I keep asking, I see these discussions online where people are like, how is Ukraine going to win this war? And there's people that are like, oh, they're obviously going to win, and Russia is running out of money and they're running out of people and da 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 da. It's like they've got like three times more people, so much more natural resources. Ukraine's industries are basically destroyed. Like, if America got into a war where we actually had to like use our own shit, like Israel and Ukraine would be in trouble quick. Because if it was like, hey guys, we can't send you stuff anymore, like we got to use it for us, like if the Western world wasn't able to funnel money and guns and bullets and bombs to Ukraine, that war would have been over a year ago.
Well,
Like
it might not last right now. That's I think they're struggling right now because we're not giving as much, and I think also their economy is pretty strained and has been like kind of hanging on. And I don't
yeah.
know, from what I've heard, who knows if they could last like another year with how things have been going.
No, I mean, and it's just messed up because like, it's going to be a bunch of giant corporations that get all the contracts to rebuild Ukraine. Ukraine's going to be plunged into debt, probably to the IMF and various other countries. And basically, it's like, oh, you get to become an economic proxy state of the
Hmm.
EU and, America, which is sort of like a very common MO of how you project power and sort of control people without invading them. It's like, yeah, I don't need to invade your country and occupy you. I just need to put you in impossible debt to us. And now it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, same ends. We get to
Which is
dictate terms. Yeah.
my maybe last segue of why I'd say before people should start doing at least a little bit of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin so that you're not so reliant on these currencies. And I think there is a big shift. Countries are starting to use gold or other bases instead of the US dollar. Bitcoin seems to be a good alternative. But just yesterday, 2 days ago, the ETF passed, which means that companies like BlackRock and all of those big banks are going to start offering ways to buy crypto, Bitcoin, where they have a custodial security and it's not going to get stolen or
Yeah.
lost or anything like that. But to me, that kind of defeats a lot of the purpose of Bitcoin because you're connected to banks, which is kind of what Bitcoin
Yeah.
didn't really want.
Exactly.
I think it's going to make Bitcoin go up at least a little bit in the short to midterm, but I don't know. It makes me think like a little bit less of Bitcoin because it's not supposed to be so connected to banks.
Well, and there was the I heard something like I guess there's some like Bitcoin ETF that's getting like created, and now this is bringing up like I guess the SEC sort of cleared it. I haven't really like looked into it super deeply, but it's yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'm looking at the Bitcoin price now. I guess over the past 6 months, it's done another rally. It's up to 44,000 something or other. But yeah, no, I think we're entering strange times. And I think it doesn't hurt, never hurts to diversify your assets and to, have a little extra food on hand, have a little, stuff to make sure you're not going to be left in the lurch.
Yep,
But
or
yeah, no, I think
grow your own food, like I'm trying to do.
yes,
Eat
you're
more
making your food
mushrooms,
for us.
grow mushrooms at home. It's a good, cheap alternative. I don't know.
Yes. But yeah,
But
what do you, so I guess before we elephant in the room, what do you think of the our election this year? You think if it's Trump Biden, who do you think wins? Just what's your instinct?
I think at this point, Trump is winning. Um,
Really?
yeah, I don't know. There's a lot that can happen in the next 10 months.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, both of them can die, literally. We can have
Yeah. No.
like I'm not trying to be funny or whatever,
Yes.
but that
But
could
no, but
happen.
the statement of fact, yes.
Yeah. We could get further into a war, which you never know how that can go. The economy can go anywhere right now. We could have another COVID. Um, and then I think Trump said recently he decided who his VP is, but that'll be interesting. He said he can't announce it yet. A lot of people are thinking it's going to be Vivek, whatever Vam's wrong,
And that
whatever
that would be the most
wrong, I
like
think.
that would be like the most aggressive presidential ticket of all time.
It'd be
It's
strong
just
move, I think. I don't think it hurt him at all. He said
I
it's not Nikki Haley. They listed a bunch of people. He said no, no, no. When they said Chris Christie, he said nah, he's probably eating. I
uh,
could.
uh,
I mean, he is funny sometimes.
just undefeated in the humor side of
But
that
who do you think
wow
is going to
that
win?
I don't know, man. I think the fact that I don't know. I honestly I think it's a coin flip. But I think Trump probably has better chances than anyone really thinks.
Mm.
And again, because it's, with Trump, he has some like people that are going to vote for Joe Biden aren't ashamed to talk about supporting Joe Biden. People that are going to vote for Trump have an incentive to just keep that information to themselves,
Hmm.
and especially depending on where they live. And so I think that, and I think I don't know. I mean, polls are showing Trump up nationally. Polls are showing him up in key swing states. I
Biden
think
is
it's
at
crazy. Yep.
32% approval rate. No
Oof.
one under 40 has ever won.
Well, and it's crazy because like
That's tough.
the way that Joe Biden has been very supportive of Israel and all this, and like people are talking about it's losing him support amongst young people. It's using him support against Muslim Americans.
And
Um, and
Jews aren't really too supportive of him either. He's not really
they're
gaining
happy
their
with him
support.
either. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's found this really unique way of basically pissing off everyone.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's almost it's practice. It's pretty impressive actually. um, but
It's
yeah,
like
it's just, I,
yeah,
I
it's like do you know the game where you jump marbles to try and get like as few marbles left?
yeah, yeah,
And like it's actually almost as impressive to get like the most amount of marbles left
yeah,
as it is
yeah.
like the least amount. Like you
Yes,
have to
yes,
be
yeah,
skilled to do it if you're really intentional.
yes. No, but I mean, look, and I think if Trump wins again, it's going to be crazy because he'll be the first ever non-consecutive two-term president. He basically gets sworn in, and from day one, he's a lame duck. Um, depending on how Congress and the Senate goes, he might just be able to get nothing done, or he might be able to get a lot done. And I think it's going to freak people out. I think people are going to lose their ever-loving minds, maybe rightfully so. I mean, I generally think a lot of the sort of craziness around Trump, like I think he's definitely a jerk. I don't like a lot of his policy. I think some of his policy was good. I don't love if like I would rather it not be him. I would rather it be basically anyone else because I think the country just needs to move on and put him in the rearview mirror. And I don't think having him as president will be good for the country. I mean, if I would prefer, I think, frankly, I'd prefer Biden, Haley, or DeSantis to 4 more years of Trump, just from a
Well,
pure, like, holding us together standpoint.
here's I think a pretty unique thought. And I really believe it, but I think it's something to at least think about is I think a lot of times we give people a little bit too much credit of how much they're doing. And like I'm guilty of it 100%. But I'll say like, oh, Biden sucks right now because like look at all this stuff that sucks. And 5 years ago said, oh, Trump sucks because oh look at all this stuff, whatever. Those people, yeah, they're powerful. They're the most powerful person in the world, probably, but they're
Yeah,
not so powerful where they're really changing all of this stuff. I don't think. Like a lot of these things are gonna happen anyway because they're already in motion. I don't know if it was not Biden in power right now, if it was Trump or if it was Nikki Haley or Bernie Sanders or really anyone, I don't think the situation in the Middle East would be that different. I don't think the situation in Ukraine, Russia would be that different. So it's like we say, oh, it better be this person, it better be this person. A lot of stuff I think is in motion where I don't know if it really matters who that person is. What matters
yeah.
is like collectively wanting to do stuff. And it's like, if collectively we don't care, that stuff's gonna happen. I don't know. I just don't think these people are really influencing as much as we really think, but I could be naive. Who knows?
No, and I think, look, and you and me we're more online and plugged in than most people, but I think really like I think most people just don't pay attention and don't really care. Like I frankly, because at the end of the day, I do think that your point is exactly right. Like I think that who is actually occupying the Oval Office has much less impact on most people's lives than people want to admit. I think people want to have this feeling of like Donald Trump's going to be our savior, or Joe Biden's the devil, or Joe Biden's the hero. And it's like these people aren't really doing anything. Like you'd be much better off paying attention to what's going on in your state and
Yeah.
understanding your county government, your state government. Like that's all going to have way more of an impact on your day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
More than likely. I mean, certainly the federal politicians can do some things that really can, screw things up or, declare war or do something wild or but for the most part it's like what happens in Washington D.C. doesn't necessarily impact a ton of like average mom and pa and the folks around the country. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know, but like I said, I hope Trump doesn't win. I think that I don't know. I think it's going to be crazy. But
Yeah, that's for sure.
the whole thing just makes me nervous. Like it just gives me like low grade anxiety.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't know what to think. I try not to think about it too much because there's really not much you can do. You just got to wait for it and see what happens. But part of me feels like we were talking before this about like plans for my property or jobs, this that. Part of me doesn't want to think more than a year in advance too much because like I want to be flexible to maybe move
Hmm.
or be flexible in my job. There's just so much change that can happen right now. I think I'm just worried about like the next few months a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
No,
I think that
I
was a
think
good catch up, a good little preview of
yeah,
the year to come. We'll try and I think a good goal is maybe we do this at least once a month, but we'll
yeah,
try maybe for like twice a month. I think every week is hard these days with like actually having
absolutely.
to go places, not like during pandemic when
Yeah.
you're just at home all
Sitting
day.
down.
That was the
Yes.
best. I miss that. I miss it.
Oh God, I'd never go back.
Yeah, we that might be happening too. But much
Uh,
love you guys. I'll talk to you
yeah.
soon.
Peace.